Okay, so since unfortunately, and this conflict is still not ended, um, and we all firmly believe that it will end as soon as possible. However, this is less and less an option, and we're more and more aware of what Putin is doing. However, we're unaware of why. So, just to step back here and to understand the context in which this is being acted upon, the way it's being acted upon. Poroshenko, this Ukrainian president that was before Zelensky, was taken off power because of his nationalistic aspirations, and again because of this Russian exodus from Ukraine, which was also happening in smaller amount than Ukrainian is in this moment, that is to be sure. However, nonetheless, this is about, I guess, cause and consequence. And once Poroshenko retired, Zelensky was voted upon by the Ukrainian people because he said that he would stop the nationalistic aspirations of Ukraine to get Russian citizen or Russian population that was part of Ukraine out of Ukraine. This is what Ukrainian people chose. They chose Zelensky, which even said that he would beg Putin or be on one knee in order to like make some kind of a compromise between the sides. This is what Ukrainian people voted upon. So Zelensky obviously, this Minsk agreement was conducted in which they decided to protect these Russians in these Donbas, Donetsk, Lugansk regions, and none of this was followed in practice. This was just a written document which was ignored. So what happened is that these Azov, these Nazis, Putin refers to denazifying Russia, and for you who don't know, this is what he means. Basically, there is a military formation in Ukraine which is supported by the regime of Zelensky. They're like armed forces. I don't know how much numbers, how many thousands of people do they have, but nonetheless they're armed, so they're allowed to be like an armed paramilitary part of the Ukrainian army, and they have like celebrations for a Bandera. This Bandera guy is some Nazi guy who they celebrate, and these are these are celebrations like with torches through the streets of Ukraine. I'm not sure if it's Kiev, but they basically openly celebrate the birthdays of Nazi leaders from the World War II with torches. They walk on the streets, they carry swastikas, and this should be really disturbing. And they're armed. So this is what Putin is This is what Putin has to deal with. Okay, and this was also, in the sense, for 8 years, this was also being, and these meetings were supported by national. I mean, they weren't stopped, so there was even national security for these meetings, so that they can take place without any disruption. So imagine the influence that these paramilitary formations have on the Ukrainian government. So this was a threat. I mean, nobody despises anything more in Russia than some Nazis, on their border flashing weapons. I mean, this like just to put this in a context, imagine that in the US, like Mexicans decided to hate like Americans. They really hate them. They start putting like arms and even nuclear capabilities in these Mexican hands. Okay, and they hate Americans. They want, and all the Americans who like live in Mexico. Let's suppose that this is the case, because this is the case in Russia, in Ukraine. They start killing these Americans and their children. You know, the children is particular, as if like Russian children did not die. I mean, so this is like huge manipulation again on the part of the West and the Western media and everybody, in order to turn everybody's hate. Do you know how many people are being punished right at this moment for this Putin guy? Everybody's being punished. Like Ukrainians who don't, like, are not allowed, like Ukrainians are being punished. I mean, exodus of Ukrainian citizens in millions. Ukrainian men who are probably, some of them probably want to go to war, some of them don't. I mean, some of these people voted for Zelensky to stop this conflict, and I'm sure like not all of them want to go to war with Russia, even though everybody's promoting that like we're gonna fight for democracy until the last Ukrainian. I would seriously wonder if America was under this kind of attack, if Americans would fight, you know, the Russia until the last American. I mean, but these guys are just like placed there, and the whole Europe is placed in this war between the U.S. and Russia. Make no mistake about it. And what Americans will do, they will seduce everybody they can in order to rule. So this massive seduction that's being taken place is in order to rule. And how? So they will basically, just like in the World War II, Americans benefited largely based on credits that they, that they will offer. Once this mess, and I don't know how far this mess will go, because Poland now is also becoming introduced as the next potential victim of Putin in this conflict, and this is where it becomes dangerous, because Poland is part of NATO. However, NATO does not. American part of NATO is definitely not going to take part, as if they haven't taken part already, but they're not taking part. So they're willing to sacrifice all these Ukrainian nationalists, Polish. Poland also has like a hate towards Russia, discontent, if you will. But it will, Poland has an unease for a long time with Russia, and a number of conflicts in the history have made Poland and Russia far from being allies in any kind of way. So now they're pushing military and all this help, like we're gonna help Ukraine, we're gonna help, like they're willing to arm, because America's business is weapons. So these politicians that will probably, I don't know, invest in stocks, or that own these military capacities and manufacturing of weapons, they're basically the ones who promote this. This is not even probably the American people. However, I don't know if American people, they've been so, dehumanized by their culture, and the weapons to them is something of a completely natural phenomenon. I mean, to arm people to them is not strange at all. So basically now you have more countries being dragged in, and Europe is being threatened into becoming the ground on which the US-Russian conflict is about to take place. And this is s- this shows, this is what I've said about, that's why European Union makes no sense. And also there's Germany here as well, which is a big component, because Poland, again, if Poland has animosity towards Russia, Germany also has animosity towards Russia. And Germany was like, was the place which I thought got rid of the syndrome of nationalistic, and even with these migrants, I actually thought that Germany was the best, the most improved country on the planet, coming from where they came from 50 years ago to where they are today, not economically, but ethically. We're taking all these immigrants from Syria, and like, let's talk about like Syrian immigrants and how they are, they are like not being accepted in Europe nearly as warm-heartedly as Ukraine's. Why? Because Syria uh, that's a conflict. That's the consequence of a U.S. intervention. So these, so this is more okay when U.S. And NATO creates these immigrants. That's fine. But I mean, that's more reasonable to some than when Ukrainians are, or when Russia does. So it's like this huge burden is being put on Putin. But let's put that aside. Like, even by his people, how they're gonna make Russia poor and unstable in every possible way. I mean, pretty much they're eliminating like cat competitions for like Russian cats. I mean, these Russians, like, most of these people haven't even voted for Putin. Perhaps they don't agree with his politics yet. The whole of Russia will be punished. This is 300 million people, but nobody cares. I mean, like, who cares? Like, so what with this migration, what happens with this migration stuff? I mean, you're just destroying country. They're just destroying country after country. Like, if Poland, if Germany, God forbid, gets drawn into these conflicts, I hope that like these Norwegians countries, like Sweden, which also had like conflict with Russia in the in 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 the past. Uh, I mean, I just hope that people stay neutral and they don't take such harsh sides, because the neutrality in this situation is really key. And Sweden is a perfect example of that, because they've prospered a great deal because of their neutrality. Because war destroys people. You don't understand. Like, you have to rebuild all of this. You have to rebuild people. You have to rebuild infrastructure. You have to rebuild like everything. This costs money, and America will give you money for your rebuilding, and then your children and your grandchildren will be in debt to this system which trust, to this seduction that you're being drawn into. So I pray that Poland does not bring whole of European side of NATO, because then the passions will spur even more, because then because Russia will react. Once these planes, in Polish whatever airports take off to go to fight this war in Ukraine, Poland will be considered an enemy, and in the war situation, they may suffer consequences in the form of military actions that will take place in Poland. And then the whole NATO will be directly involved. Obviously, Americans will not sacrifice a single soldier in this war. Let's make that clear. And you people are fooled that, and even Zelensky was fooled. Like, he was expecting. He is like going crazy, because he was expecting completely that somebody is going to support him. So they lied to him. He must have had some kind of reassurance. Then once this starts, that NATO is going to dive in and all this help is going to come to him. Yet you know, yet the help isn't coming because obviously everybody wants to stay neutral because that's the reasonable thing to do. And the only unreasonable thing is he, and you know, he being programmed to do what's reasonable for the U.S., which is far from reasonable. I mean, if you make two people fight and you benefit on from that conflict, that doesn't make you good. Here's an economic, you know, news for you. So basically, even if you stay neutral, you don't want to benefit from this. I mean, so basically, I don't know how quickly this can end, taking on it all into consideration. But this has to stop, and it has to stop like immediately. And you're not helping. Nobody's helping by turning Putin, by whole world against Putin. You know, this is nonsense. This is just a huge, huge, huge mistake that everybody's making, and they're just, you know, adding on to the fire. I am terribly, terribly disappointed that this tragedy hit Ukrainian people because they're not really responsible. You know, there are some parts there that are senseless and that are under the illusion that they're protecting their own country. And it's a sad thing to see how many people will die because of the huge propaganda that's been you know, thrown in. And I don't care about the US, and I don't care about the UK in particular, and I feel that Europe has to find enough sense that all of these governments that are around Europe are not puppet governments like Ukraine's government is, and that I'm not sure, I can't read Macron, and the Germans are already like invested like, I don't know, $1 trillion on arming themselves, and these were the people that until like 10 days ago were great economic partners, and that would probably, that in my mind had made considerable step in humanity with the Syrians refugees, and they've opened their doors, and like most of Syrian refugees, while Europe's doors of like Hungary and all these countries was closed to them, in Austria, the Germans opened their doors for them, and I was so proud of Germany, I swear, during that particular time. I'm not sure, you know, they probably have a necessity for, I mean, cheap labor. Nobody does this out of humane reasons. But nonetheless, you know, I want to believe that, you know, we do this for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. So, but I was a huge favor. I was a huge fan of Germany, and like, and I had Polish friends, and like Ukrainians are, everything is like is spinning out of control, you know, because of these monsters. I'm sorry. So take care of yourselves. Don't take sides. I mean, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Don't think that aggression helps anybody. Don't think that warplanes help anybody. These people are caught in the situation, and they feel they can't get out. I hope there is reason, and the reason wins over this craziness, and that perhaps this leads to something new, to new understanding which we need to have. We need to have this understanding that Russia might actually free us. This is my hope, that Russia may actually free us from all these puppet governments and all these madness and all these weapons. And I hope that Russia is this ultimate soldier throughout history. And maybe this ultimate soldier can solve, can destroy all other soldiers and then demilitarize itself. This is what I hope. I don't know if this is going to happen, but this is the only worthy goal, even if the Russians do not do this. To pretty much, because this has been going too long, and I know everybody has a free will and everybody can carry a weapon if they do. However, is this really free will? I don't know, like, aggression is condemned by God. I know this, I felt this. And aggression is a huge, huge sin. And promoting this weaponry and this, is a huge sin. And I hope you don't bite. That's all I have to say.